once again, welcome to an insightful podcast. My name is Elana, and our panel of experts are here to help and assist and unpack. And today we're talking about emotional first aid, building resilience and vulnerability for the whole family. All of those words are so important, building resilience, and then also how to embrace vulnerability and what it actually means to us and to our families. Now, we're going to ask you to comment and be part of this conversation. So let's get started. Our experts today, I've got my mom blogger. She is your steel girl. Marie-Louise, it is such an honor to get to know you as a social entrepreneur and as someone who changes the world for good online. Isabelle, our mental health advocate as well as counselor. And Marelize, our homeopath that helps so many people. It's all in the plants and the flowers and how all of these remedies actually chooses us. And it's so wonderful to have all of you here today. Vulnerability is sticking with me in our title for today. When do we feel most vulnerable? What is that emotion? Because even when I say it and how it rolls off my tongue, it makes me feel bare.
I think vulnerability is that realization that you aren't bulletproof, that you have, feet made of clay when you thought they were covered in rock. And it's that realization that you're out of your depth and that you maybe have weaknesses that you don't even want to admit to. It's definitely not an emotion that we like. It's a very, it makes you feel naked almost in terms of your emotions.
I don't want to feel vulnerable. I want to be bulletproof. I want people to think that I have the utmost control. I'm the best mom. I'm the best person at work. How do we even make peace with this word?
You don't make peace with the word. You begin to accept it because it's a reality. Wanting to be bulletproof can only last so long before one of the things drops. And that one penny that drops now drives you into huge psychological distress. Vulnerability, I see it as being transparent. You don't have to fully be unclothed with people, but you can choose what aspects of your life to share with certain people based off of proximity. There are people you share vulnerable moments about raising kids about. And then there are people you share vulnerable moments about being a woman and raising kids. That honest experience of I've lost myself or I don't know who I am anymore. That's different. You can have that conversation with someone different. And then there are conversations that are just left for your spouse where you just share certain parts of your being with your spouse and no one else knows those little things about you. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, what vulnerability is. It's you also still are in control and choosing how much you share. How much transparency can you give?
How close is being insecure, letting insecurity be part of your body, your environment? How close is that to vulnerability?
Well, I would say insecurity is the opposite spectrum of being vulnerable. Because when you're vulnerable, you are comfortable in your skin. You are acknowledging that this is my skin and actually I like it. Versus when you're insecure, you don't actually like what you see. You don't actually feel comfortable in the way you present or look or how you act versus someone else acting. So insecurity would be something more where you feel like you lack. Versus vulnerability is you accepting the fact that you can't be everything. And it's kind of like, it's so relieving of a weight to feel as though it is normal to feel like this. Versus insecurity says, no, I don't want to feel like this. I need to change it. I need to drink more water or lose this much weight. Or it's consistently nitpicking. It's critical. It has no compassion in it. Versus being vulnerable, there's a certain compassion you are also giving to your body in saying, you are like this. And I will accept you. I might not like you, but I accept you. You know what I mean? Versus insecurity says, nope, I hate it. Change it. Do something about it. It's very panicky even. I feel energy that's very panicky.
And judgmental,
of someone
yeah.
who's got insecurities. It's now playing over and over and over that one mistake that you did or something like that. Versus vulnerability is saying, I can let it all go. I can literally let it all go.
Mama, Can you relate to that?
Yes, I think at first vulnerability to me felt like failure. But vulnerability sounded like it needed to have value because I like languages, and vulnerability to me sounded like it came from somewhere where value needed to be linked to it. And then I changed my perspective and I started seeing vulnerability as finding the learning moments, finding the value, and finding the beauty in the moments that might feel like failure or in the things that we fail at. But when we fail, like there's maybe something there that we learn, that we take, that's still beautiful, that's still valuable. So although at first I felt like vulnerability meant failure, now I actually value it.
How do you make time for emotions in the family? I mean, do we set aside time? It makes me think of, I remember playing at a friend's house when I was little, and 6 o'clock on the dot, switch off the television, and it was time for Bible study. No matter what happened, you would be in mid-sentence and the television would go off, and the father would take out the Bible respectfully, and that was the time to share God's word, and that was the time that everyone got to talk about the Bible. And then after they were done, they would switch it back on as if nothing happened, and everyone would watch TV again. And what I was always mesmerized by the transition, the flip mode of noise, fun, and then Bible study, and then back into fun, noise. Is that how we create space for emotions in our family? How do we present it?
I am intrigued by what you're saying because from my perspective, it shouldn't feel like such a transition. It should always be congruent throughout your day in terms of as you are doing Bible study, God knows who you are. Why are you trying to be for God? That's weird. Why do people do that? For me, that just doesn't make sense. God knows how you talk. He knows how you talk when you're comfortable, when you're happy, when you're excited, when you're passionate, when you're sad, when you're grieving. It's that authenticity that I would like people to carry through because that authenticity allows you to allow people into you and understand.
Sorry, I want to interrupt you. Keep the authenticity. So try and move away from the God metaphor. So I'm sorry I led you that way.
Okay.
It was just an example.
Okay.
You're on the right track.
No.
Start with the authenticity of.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I believe in being authentic. A healthy person is a congruent person. We need to learn as people to be congruent in every part of our lives. If you meet me at the grocery store, if you meet me at school with the kids, if you meet me on the playground, that consistency of the thread of this is what Isabelle is like, that should be there. And that's what being vulnerable is allowing yourself to just be, even if it means you're the only person in that room who is like that, because that is you being vulnerable and saying, I'm going to be authentically myself. I am going to be who I am, irrespective of the spaces that I'm in, because I think sometimes the world gives us this nuanced message that who you are is not enough. I need to be like Elana and have her speaking voice and have whatever she has. Oh, I need her hair. Oh, I need her brains and her intellect. Versus it's fine to be you the way you are. Whatever you're lacking, it's fine. You know what I mean? It's not even a lack. It's like you were yourself the way you were designed with your own unique experiences. And
how do we
that's
teach that to
great.
our children? I mean, how do we, is it the model behavior that we always discuss in these sessions? Is it I love the fact that we don't just switch on and off emotions, in order to teach, now we're going to teach you about sadness. Now we're going to teach you about, so how do we make space for that in the family setup?
So it's literally reminding yourself that as you are flesh, there are so many parts of you. There's the emotional self, there's this, there's that, that every time you are moving through life, you attend to these things as you go. As a mom, if your child is feeling sad, we acknowledge the sadness. We say, where are you feeling it even? You know what I mean? Sometimes kids feel certain emotions somewhere and you get to engage in that conversation. And the more you start doing that with your children, they become more emotionally aware. They gain a little bit of emotional intelligence as well in understanding themselves and other people better. And you also, the modeling never stops. The modeling never stops. You as mom, I see moms sometimes wanting to be strong for their kids in a situation where that could have been a teachable moment. That I also face this. I also struggle with my whatever. You know what I mean? And that's where I say vulnerability is how you carry it through, in saying to my kids, hey, I'm sorry, I really don't know about that. Let me do my research. I'll come back to that. Oh, hey, I really don't have the answer for you about that. I'll come back to it. It's being honest when you failed. Like, I'm so sorry I didn't show up on time, or I didn't come pick you up and someone else had to pick you up. It's really just letting a kid know also that you're human. Because sometimes we grow up with parents we think are invincible, and then you become an adult and you realize, no, where was this realness from our parents to actually engage with us on a realistic level to say, this is really what it's like. You need to juggle this, you need to juggle that. You don't have to do that. You know what I mean? That honesty, that authenticity, that's what keeps our relationships very connected, because vulnerability lets people in. And it also shows them that I'm not perfect. I'm not doing as you think I am. This is what I'm doing. And that peeling of a layer might even let someone else want to peel their layer and be more open and show up in a way that is more connected. Because sometimes we can be so superficial. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. And we move on. And that's just how we relate with other people. But vulnerability now allows us to say, breathe. I can just be myself and talk to you like a person who I know also is made of flesh. So you also feel pain sometimes. You also struggle sometimes. And let's normalize that. We live in such a world where perfection seems like a norm, and it's not. And it shouldn't be. It really, really, really shouldn't be. We should just normalize being normal. And that's why I think even in trauma counseling, there are certain things you need to normalize for a person, because a person thinks that false narrative is the norm. And that's not it.
So being vulnerable is actually creating a realization that everything is not perfect and that it's okay.
Yes.
Without judgment.
Without judgment, without fear, without the expectations that you have for yourself, that other people have. It's like you can breathe. It's like taking that breath of fresh air after swimming for so long or drowning for so long. It really is like a relief, because you realize I was really living up to unrealistic expectations of what I thought I could do or what I think I should be doing.
You just said something that I just love what you just said. That we're living up to an expectation. You know what? The label mom, that word is so beautiful. And Mother's Day is wonderful. But all the other time, it comes with such a big responsibility. Huh?
Yeah, it's loaded.
Do you remember the time when your baby first said mom or mommy?
Oh, yes.
Or
You
ma,
were like,
or
it
mama?
has to be the first word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you remember the amount of responsibility it came with? What was it for you?
Oh, everything. A mom is supposed to be everything for that baby, whether it's at birth, breastfeeding, taking care, scheduling appointments, those magnitudes of appointments we have at the beginning, being the thermometer for the home. It's wonderful, but oh my goodness, that's a huge responsibility. And sometimes, what if the thermometer feels really heated? You know, it's like, it's the responsibility of knowing yourself well, empowering yourself well, so that you can do it well.
I remember having my baby and thinking, I need 2 more years just to get to know myself, but you're already here.
Yeah.
So now what? Huh? I'm going to have to do it together. I'm going to have to get to know me and you at the same time.
And then you became a different person that you didn't even know existed before you had that person.
Thank God for the better.
Yeah.
You became a new version. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like we need to also learn a little bit from nature. How nature swiftly, beautifully, gracefully moves through the different seasons. That's what our lives are as well. We feel so bad sometimes that we even hold on to stuff that we should have let go like 5 years ago. Because you realize, in this season, is this really working for me? Should I still have this? Is it even a thing anymore? That's why decluttering, even mentally, is important, not just physically, but decluttering some of that stuff out and seeing that, oh, okay, I can let that go. And that fun mom is still in there, but she's different. She's not that type of fun. She's a different kind of fun now. You know what I mean? Whatever that has evolved into. And that's the beauty of it. And that vulnerability now of sharing those experiences where you do feel a little bit overwhelmed. It's okay. You tell your kids. Then they learn, oh, when mom is overwhelmed, this is what she does. She goes to the kitchen, makes tea for herself. Then when they grow up, because you've been modeling this, when they feel stressed and overwhelmed, they know what to do. It's like the kids who grow up with alcoholic parents. You saw them reach for that instead of the other options of doing something to cope.
Yeah.
And that's why I say the modeling is consistent. It's consistent. It's like for you also. And that's why I guess living a life that is authentic and that is in alignment with your values, that helps you stick to this easier. You don't have to think about it. You know what's important to you. You know what you're prioritizing. You know what your boundaries are. And if your boundaries need to be reassessed, you reassess your boundaries and you keep moving forward saying, okay, guys, I've changed this boundary. It's changed. It's this now. And that's what you do. And you inform and you move forward. And that makes it consistent. It doesn't feel like a separate part of you that where you have to consistently shift personas. It's still you. It's authentically you.
What happens emotionally in our bodies when, and what is the effects on our bodies when we are in a moment of resilience, where we are in a moment of vulnerability? Is it the same thing, you know?
So when we are vulnerable, it basically puts stress on our body because we feel uncomfortable and so on. So we come back to that old cortisol problem once again. So when we bottle up our emotions and we can't be vulnerable and we never let go, we are literally doing ourselves harm. In fact, you're literally shortening your lifespan because you are going to get problems with your digestive system. You're not going to process your food well because you almost by letting out emotions, you can create space so that you can digest things better on a physical as well as a mental level. If we keep all of those things in, we mess up our hormones. So, we don't want to admit that we're struggling with things. And all of a sudden you wonder, why am I not falling pregnant? Or why is my menstrual cycle all over the show? But it's all of those things. It messes up our immunity. It changes our energy. It interferes with our sleep. It even makes us experience pain, physical pain on a more intense level, because the more tense you are, the more you are going to have headaches and things like that. So by holding on to emotions, we are basically making everything in our body get stuck and congested and sore. And we need to move. Things need to move through our body.
You just said something beautiful, which is actually really negative, but congestion and that feeling of inflammation, can emotions physically make you sick?
Absolutely, without any doubt. They become somatized.
110%. And can I tell you something that people don't realize about emotions? Emotions are like physical sensations. They are there to inform you about something. Whether you're not taking care of your needs properly or whether someone is violating something for you. And internally now you have this turmoil. The longer you want to suppress it or not think about it, what does your brain do? Your brain says, oh, this is important. Let's just make it let's make it the foreground. Now you can't stop thinking about this thing. Versus if you acknowledged that I feel meh today, what does feeling like that feel like? I feel a little dull. My chest is a bit tight, or my chest feels a little heavy. After you acknowledge it and you really welcome it like a guest, emotions are like guests. You open the door, you welcome it. It comes to visit, it goes away. And the best way to explain it to kids, you're like, it's like a fart. You hold in your farts, you're going to be sick. You're going to be sick if you're holding your farts. So when you feel a fart, let it pass, let it go through. Some are stinky, some are not stinky, but eventually they go away. And that's the most important thing. And when they're starting to not go away, it means you're holding on to this, I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to talk about it. That's suppressing. It takes a lot of mental load versus everything, and you still have to do everything else. And then everything falls apart because you're now focusing on this one emotion and not feeling it, or not even expressing your feelings to people when someone has hurt you. But now it's eating you up inside because you should have said something to this mom, or you should have said this to this person. You didn't.
Oh no,
and
I did.
Eats you.
So basically, as a homeopath, we have to identify where someone is feeling that stress or where that stress is going. So when we are stressed, we are living, or when we keep our emotions inside, we basically live in a state where there's lots of cortisol and stress hormones floating around. These things literally decrease the blood flow to our digestive system and give us things like cramps and indigestion or diarrhea. Messes up our hormones. So when we are stressed and we hold in our emotions, we may wonder, why are my periods so irregular, or why am I not able to fall pregnant? It interferes with our immunity, our ability to sleep, even makes us experience pain on a much higher level, because all this tension, the way that we hold on to our emotions, leads to congestion and things getting stuck inside our body, and literally things don't flow. And that's why we need to get rid of them, so that we can actually get rid of our emotions and get our whole body to be back in balance and restore our natural flow.
What if your natural flow needs some assistance? How do we remedy it?
So, of course, there's counseling and things like that, talking to people. It's very, very important to, even just getting our emotions to flow can very often lead to kind of things physically also flowing again. So talk to someone. And even if you don't want to burden a friend or a family member, talk to your hairdresser or your nail technician or just someone out there. But then, of course, you can also go to taking actual remedies, for example. So with homeopathy, as a homeopath, there are many remedies for emotions, and there's many that you can walk into a pharmacy. There's many that have been trusted for many decades to kind of restore harm and balance. But it's quite interesting because homeopathy is all about restoring balance inside the body. So depending on the remedies that you take, it can bring different types of balance. So there's a remedy, for example, called Natura. You may recognize it as a tissue salt as well. And Natura is for people who hold their emotions and they cannot cry and they suppress their grief and they will only cry when they are alone. On the flip side, you've got a remedy like pulsatilla where they can't keep any emotions and they're always hanging on to people and they're crying all the time. And when you take homeopathic remedies, it kind of brings balance. So if you are too emotional, it calms you down a little bit. So often when patients, for example, take a remedy like Natura, they'll come back and they'll say, you can't believe it, I actually cried and I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And so homeopathy, while we treat physical things, can also restore balance on a mental and an emotional level.
I love that you said that. Sometimes it's the little things that we need to release some of that emotion. Crying is a great way. Laughing is a great way. Connecting with another human being is a great way. Sometimes we just need a listening ear. Someone who's just going to let you vent or let you talk about what's happening and what you're struggling with no advice giving, with no shame, with no judgment, with nothing. You know what I mean? And that's someone you can just have coffee with and have that moment to bond.
This conversation is so interesting because in the week I spoke to my husband and he said to me, I just want to have fun tonight. I want something fun. So now I'm breaking my head as the thermometer of the house. How will we bring fun? And I realized that I bought a board game that has been unwrapped. So we take this thing out and now we have to interact and sign out all these. And I actually realized for the first time that my husband is a very good actor, you know.
Yeah.
He was very good at acting out half of these things that we were supposed to identify in this board game. And at the end of the night, after playing this board game, he was filled with such joy that he started feeling emotional. He started crying. And it was such an interesting moment for me because when we were talking about embracing vulnerability, it doesn't appear the same for most of us. How do you experience it in your home, having babies, just like me, you know, 4 different babies and at different stages?
Yeah.
And how do you help them navigate their feelings at home? You know, it wasn't something that I needed, but I could tell that it was something my family needed.
Yeah. I think the base that we always start from in our home is creating a safe space. I feel it's really important because, let's be honest, you can't just be vulnerable in any situation at any given moment. But you need to know that at least somewhere in this world, there's a corner or a space that you can be completely vulnerable in. So that's kind of our step one, was creating a safe space. And the way we did that was, as a mom, I want to fix. Something happens, I want to fix. And I needed to unlearn that. I needed to say, wait, creating a safe space means letting them vent, letting the emotions flow, not being scared of the emotion, not attaching my idea of the emotion, and then also once they vented, while they're venting, to listen, to intentionally listen, to, okay, I hear what you're saying, but what does that actually mean? And then we have a saying in our home where we say emotions are valid, but they're not always true. So yes, you may feel ugly because you don't like this color on you or whatever, but you're not ugly. You didn't feel ugly yesterday when you wore something else. Or you may be mad because you didn't want to share. It's valid. You're allowed to be mad. But your sister shared with you the other day. So let's just put things into perspective. And I think for us, creating that space for our girls, we needed to first learn to kind of not be ruled by our emotions. But now it gives them this great opportunity where there's no right or wrong emotion. You're absolutely allowed to feel whatever you want, but let's just deal with it. Feel it, let the guest enter, and then let's deal with it together.
Yeah, I like that, but I wanted to be more specific. When you feel a certain way, it's telling you something. What are you angry about? I don't want to share because sharing means I don't have to play with this, or it's not my turn to do this. It's that feeling of loss again. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes we see an emotion based on our experiences, but it should be, oh, when you share, it's as if I'm saying this is not for you now, and we're taking it away from you. And it's that you need to be like, oh, I get it. And that's what emotions are. It's you saying, I'm mad. Why am I mad about this? What about this specific conversation or what this person said? Why is it irking me? When you get to the root cause of that, you'd understand why. It's like your unconscious brain is throwing signals of, I'm upset because when someone says this to me, it's a trigger because my mom used to do this, or my dad. It's very subconscious, but you interpret it as a feeling. And that's why unpacking feelings is so important, because it helps you now analyze your little blockages. Because developmentally, there's somewhere where you are blocked off because of not processing at that time properly that emotion. So it carries you through life. And when situations happen, you always have these lingering feelings that don't go away. Also, you find it's because of that. It's because there's that unprocessed anger or that processed resentment or neglect that you felt, or abandonment, whatever it might be. And it shows up continually as a theme in your life. And you need to figure that out properly. And that's why emotions and processing them is so integral in that, because once you are loosed, it's like someone just gave you a cathartic experience where you really feel liberated because you've never cried before, for example. Or it's tough for you to cry. And you get into a space where you really now get softer as well in your edges. And I like that because vulnerability does that. It's like looking at a beautiful rose and admiring it in its vulnerability, but beauty at the same time, because you can't be tough. There's no beautiful, tough flowers. They look delicate and soft, and it's okay. It's okay to be like that. It's okay to be your beautiful self. And I think for kids as well, it's to teach them that.
What does acute stress look like in our homes?
Acute stress in our homes looks like a lot of psychological distress. You're not sleeping. You're not eating well. You're not taking care of self very well. You are starting to break down. You are not present at home or at work. You're not thinking as clearly as you would have if you weren't so stressed out. And sometimes it's even the consistent headaches that don't go away. Sometimes it's the consistent aches and pains. You're like, I have a pain here. They do an x-ray. They do all of this work. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like you've been ignoring your brain's signals. So your brain's like, fine, let's give you a physiological symptom so that you can deal with that. And that's where some people usually find themselves meeting a counselor like myself, is because you went everywhere else and danced around all these sorts of issues. And we forget that even with grief, we don't even allow ourselves to grieve properly sometimes, because you're supposed to go to work while you're grieving, while you're dealing. So that's why it's so important to process emotion, so that even in your day-to-day, you give yourself a chance to feel, to really, really feel whatever you're feeling. If it's anger, you're angry. Acknowledge it. I think the first step in dealing with emotions is acknowledging. Some people don't even want to be tagged with quote unquote bad emotions. And there's no such a thing as a bad emotion. And I hate that people put labels on emotions. And now your kid thinks, oh, when I'm angry, mom acts like this. She doesn't like me when I'm like that. And now what does that create? Or mom gets very anxious when I'm angry. So it's as if you're telling your child, when you feel like this, I won't love you. You know what I mean? So our reaction sometimes to the feelings of the little ones makes them realize, oh, when I'm like this, mom, she changes towards me. And it's you saying, I don't want them to feel like this, but let them feel what they feel. But let's acknowledge of why you're feeling. And it gets, as the older they get, of course, because little ones, you can't really explain that in depth. And that's why I said having that beautiful feelings thermometer in your house or the cards where a child can start identifying feelings and you teaching them about, oh, when you feel happy, where do you feel it? It's like asking those with curiosity questions of, when you're feeling joy, where do you feel it? Oh, I feel like I have sunlight in my chest. You know what I mean? Kids can be so expressive. And teaching them that type of language, they'll never lose it because now they're aware of their bodies and they understand how the mind-body connection is. Oh, I feel so light when I'm in love or when I'm happy or when I see mom or I see someone that I love. You understand? And that's what emotions should be. They should be as basic as that. Then as your kids progress into teenagers and tweeny boppers, now you start having more in-depth conversations. I hear you saying that you feel angry and this happened. What about that anger? What is attached to it? Oh, I felt disrespected. You realize I was angry because I felt when this person said this, they were disrespecting me or stepping on my toes. So what did my body do? I'm going to protect myself. And what is a protective feeling? Anger. Anger is a protective feeling. It's like you feeling disrespect and anger protects you. Like it comes through like a personality to protect you. Versus the connected feelings, it's love, it's caring for one another when you feel those type of feelings. So every feeling has a different category and it's telling you something. Oh, I feel very connected when I'm with you. I care for you. And that's what we need to remember about feelings.
It feels like our body is this entire world, filled with all these different countries and water and, like we've just heard, so many emotions. There's so much that's happening in our body. I mean, we want to help our families to present and to almost center themselves during these emotions. Don't feel or react too much if your child is angry, upset, because they might think that mommy doesn't enjoy that emotion. So, I mean, what does one do in a situation where we want our family to be themselves, to present these emotions, but we also don't want to overreact? I mean, paint the picture for us in homeopathy, and please, counselor, we'd love you to build the perfect family scenario because
I have one. I literally have
never
one.
getting angry ever again.
No,
tantrum,
You
my baby.
can't do that. Then you're perfect.
And I swear sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you act. Can I give you a classic example?
Yes.
Someone starts to cry. What is everyone's immediate reaction?
Oh.
No.
It's okay.
Here's a tissue. Here's a tissue. What does that communicate to you when I say, here's a tissue? Stop crying. Stop crying.
Wipe it up.
Your tears are not okay here. We don't accept your
What
tears
should we
here.
say?
You let a person cry. You
You
let
let it
a
out.
person cry. I would rather put a box of tissues here than you grab it, than give it to you, because that doesn't communicate my discomfort with you crying.
Thank you.
You see what I mean? And even with children and their tantrums, it's our discomfort as adults that makes them feel, oh, when I act like this, my mom doesn't like it. So now I'm going to try be a perfectionist and I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to feel like this. I'm not going to experience these type of emotions. I'm just going to be like straight and arrow.
Homeopath? Did you hear what she's saying?
I did.
I'm finished.
Before I talk as a homeopath, I would like to talk as a mom.
Please.
Because we've got two girls. They're now in their kind of early teen years. And since they were really tiny, we created, it's almost like a family timeout. It's a moment of truth. And when you call moment of truth, you can basically say or do or admit to anything. And it doesn't mean there's no repercussions, but it creates a safe space in which to, admit that you lost your school jersey or whatever, but it also gives a safe space in which to express emotions. So I am furious because, or when you said XYZ, it made me feel whatever. And that has created it, and we're carrying it into teenage years, and it actually works very well.
I love the timeout idea because it gives me permission.
Yeah.
And sometimes
because it's not the timeout that we know at school, you know?
Yeah, it's
The
got a
sit in
good
the corner.
connotation.
It does.
It's got a good connotation.
And very often they happen in the car, which is why I love doing school lifts,
Yes.
because that's a very kind
Yeah.
of safe, contained space. But we may even sometimes find that in the middle of dinner, someone goes, like, time out, I need a moment of truth, and then out spills, whatever.
I really
So
love that.
it's a nice way to, I think it works for us.
That is
I have a
nice.
timeout.
Yeah.
I find this really insightful. And I think as a mom, I'm the best mom, but I've made many mistakes. Many. I just wanted to share that.
I don't think there's a single mom on this planet who doesn't make mistakes.
I felt that. I was like, I enjoy that, because in you sharing that, it like liberates someone else from trying to appear as they are not. Because in being a good mom or a perfect mom, you really do mess up. You figure it out as you go, because literally you are just chucked into a new role. Your body is also experiencing different changes on emotional level, on a physical level. And you need to give yourself a bit of self-compassion. I feel like as women, we lack self-compassion towards ourselves. We give it to other people, but we lack it for ourselves. And I don't know why it's such a difficult thing sometimes to just allow yourself to be fallible, to be human, to be a person made of flesh and not anything else. You're not Robocop. You're not a metal. You're not cold. You're not a sterile, clean room. No. This is a bit of splatter here and there, and that's okay. It gives a room a bit of character. And your kids now can learn some interesting things about life, because your mom is so interesting. She's not this canvas that you can't approach.
I do think your mistakes also give them permission to make mistakes. I think them seeing us make mistakes, seeing us trying to figure out, it gives them permission to be okay with, oh, I also make mistakes. I can also figure it out.
Some of us are raising men. We talk about tears, and sometimes the word tears, it presents itself as female, you know? How do we make our boys feel okay? How do we raise our boys, letting them know that, you know, that the emotional timeout where you can spill the beans is also for you, that it is okay to cry and reach for the tissue when you want, because we're not going to stop your tears, you know? That you can feel confused. My boy was so confused the other day because there's obviously a lot happening for him. And the things he was saying didn't sound like him, you know? How do we give them permission, and how do we know that they're going to be okay?
Kids are very resilient. That's the one thing I will tell you. That's why as mom, you can mess up. And kids are so resilient. You dropped your child and you're like, oh, but then they continue. They go to school. They are bright. They are fine. So I think we have these preconceived ideas and expectations even for our children. And as a mom, let go of those expectations. Let your children be. Experience them for who they are. Model that as parents, when dad also can experience and express his emotions fully. Because men usually or generally experience two emotions fully or openly or congruently. That is anger and frustration. But all the other emotions, men don't really get a chance to let it out. Like when he's happy and enjoying something. And I enjoy saying, when you switch up your routine and you do something you haven't done, like the board game where you play with your family that you haven't done, it's not part of your normal routine. What it does, it adds a bit of playful element. And sometimes we don't play. We don't allow ourselves to play as adults. We forget or we disengage from that part of ourselves, but we don't understand it's still a part in you. So you need to entice it every now and again. And doing those fun, exciting, spontaneous things sometimes allow us now to experience the other emotions that we don't naturally experience, because maybe you're a corporate woman or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you don't know how to experience these other feelings because all you do is routine. So sometimes just break it up, shake it up a little bit.
I also think it's very important for boys to understand that showing emotion is not a sign of weakness. It can come from a point of strength, that you are willing to step up and say, I am feeling sad. Because the moment you share that emotion, it also normalizes it for other boys around, and they kind of go, oh, hold on, but you are the rugby team captain. If you can get upset, maybe I'm also allowed to. And it actually over time strengthens relationships so that you can actually share and so on. But I realize it's a huge societal thing because boys don't cry. And I think it starts at home, as you say.
Yeah.
So where dads are in touch with their emotions and they show it and so on. So, yeah.
And I even think moms being intentional about including the male perspective.
Yes.
Because so many times we're the moms, we know what we're doing. This is our thing. We're like, we're the thermometer. We run the house. We do the routine. Like, this is how we discipline. That is how it goes. But I think sometimes just also, I don't have boys. So, I just think including the male perspective and really seeing it as valuable will also strengthen.
To acknowledge that. What happens in our bodies when we cry?
Release. Right. We actually release endorphins when we cry. Endorphins are happy hormones. So, when we have that massive emotional release, that's why it feels so good. And that's even why you feel so drained. It's kind of like, I'm letting go. And now I've created space to feel happy. So that endorphin rush, literally, it relieves pain. It relieves things like tummy aches and body pains and all of that. So it literally lets go and it makes us happy.
And it's self-soothing. It's self-soothing. You even see it in, there's like non-verbal communication. When someone consistently does this, and they are not cold, obviously, they are self-soothing, and that's okay. It's okay to do that because you are acknowledging something, whatever sensation it is, and it makes you want to self-soothe or whatever. And self-soothing behaviors sometimes are looked upon with such shame or whatever, but it should be normal. Crying is normal. It's really, really is. Or some people apologize for it. That's when I'm like, yeah, you are really, the world has messed you up. The fact that you say, I'm so sorry, I'm crying. Why? Crying is so normal. And crying is your body's way of saying, I'm overwhelmed. How do I release this overwhelmed feeling the quickest? Tears. That cortisol gets released through your tears. You've been holding on for so long, the floodgates go loose.
You just said self-soothing, and I'm thinking of my youngest with her blankie. What do you think that is, the connection with soft and touch and emotion?
You remember the love languages? Every kid is different. Every kid's love language is different. That one, it could be literally touch is such a big thing. And that's where the 15 or 20-second hugs are wonderful. If you're a hugger, that hug where you just hold it in there and you just hold it in there for 20 seconds and then let it go. That's also a way we release. We take hugs for granted. We take these quick, okay. But there are those hugs where you
love a
need
hug.
it and you're like,
I love a hug.
20 seconds and then you release. It's the way we connect. We're humans at the end of the day. That connection, we need it. That's why vulnerability is so real. Now we live in a world where even COVID taught us, shoulder length or whatever. And that's an issue. Because then some people didn't switch back after COVID to getting to touch and cuddle and allow the little things to happen that are magical about this life. And we take it for granted. And then they are 21. Before you look, 21.
What does emotional support look like to our families? I feel for our families and sometimes the chaos that's going on.
So emotional support comes in many different ways. So firstly, it is identifying, as you said earlier, those physical symptoms, like what are you feeling? What can we do to help you? Is it butterflies in your tummy? Is it palpitations in your chest? Is it sweaty palms? And kind of trying to figure out what we can do. It is also so important nowadays. So often we'll deal with, for example, a person who has tummy issues, or they are already on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, and it could even be within your family, and yet they're not getting better. And the problem is that until you go and you unpack that root emotion, or you create a safe space in which you can talk and you can share and whatever, until that happens, you're not going to get better. And sometimes from a homeopathic point of view, there are support remedies that can just help you to feel calm and a little bit more in control, or open up the floodgates so that you can actually share your emotions. And the moment we release, it's just everything feels better. But sometimes within a family, there may be a little bit too much release, and then everyone just needs to simmer down a little bit so that we can all take a step back and just refocus and get calm again and take it from there.
I can only imagine how release and vulnerability can also cause so much confusion. You know, everyone crying or letting out their emotion. Maybe there's a little bit of loudness and, you know, so maybe there's an explanation of what it could present itself as, you know. Sometimes when someone is showing emotion, you think, this is too loud. There must be something wrong with you because, you know, this is just too much.
And that's wrong. That's why I say there are so many societally things we've normalized that are not normal. That is not the norm. We shouldn't feel like that. You should take what a person is saying for what it is and let it go there, unless they say, oh no, this is actually a problem that I've been dealing with for X and Y amount of time. And remember, in order for something to be clinically diagnosed, it needs to be affecting all areas of your life: work, school, social life, and then wherever, home life as well. Unless it's affecting those areas of your life, it's not a clinical issue or an abnormal psychology issue, but it's just a stress of life that you need to attend to. Sometimes we are so overly throwing labels around. You're gaslighting me, you're this, you're that, and that's not normal. You shouldn't do that, because now we're giving people labels on top of whatever struggle they are having, and it could make a person really shrink down and not live their life as fully. And that's why I think vulnerability is so important. Vulnerability now says, let me be who I am and accept it for what it is. And let's figure this thing out together, instead of, ooh, she's too much, or whatever. It's fine, she's too much for you, but there's people who are going to love this too much person. Or there are people who are going to be like, oh, I've been looking for you everywhere, you know? And I love that. And that's what you want your little people to be as well. We are so like, oh, let me fix it. She doesn't have friends. She'll find the people who genuinely adore her, or who genuinely love her and will support her through life and be great friends. We don't have to fix everything. We need to just let people experience life, and then we hold them within whatever experience they are in. And I think parenting is such a gentle thing, because it teaches you exactly that. You can't fix all your kids' problems for them, but you can just hold it for them and be there with them and let them know that I'll be here, good or bad. Whether you are stressed out about doing this presentation at school, we'll talk about it when you come back, and we'll figure it out. And, you know,
you just said something that's very real for moms. I think the friends thing, you know.
Oh, yes.
Not being invited to my party. The friends, the influence of friends, the lack of friends. And you just said something really beautiful. With all of our children's ages, there's always been a situation with either I'm not included, I'm excluded, or I wish I was invited. You know, can you relate to that?
Of course. That's still it still happens to us, right? Even as adults, sometimes we don't get invited. Never feels good, even if you didn't want to go.
That's the difference when you're an adult. You're
I'm
like,
fine
I really
with
didn't
it.
want to go.
No, but that's the thing. Like you'll always be like, I wasn't invited. Even if you didn't want to go, you'll notice that I wasn't invited. It might not bother you anymore, but you'll notice it. And with our kids, they don't know how to notice it, not make that about themselves, and move on. So I think that's the thing. Like, we are in this wonderful position where they need to experience those challenges so that they can one day be us and be like, they didn't invite me.
And it builds resilience.
That's
Resilience
the
is
thing.
so important, because it teaches you, resilience is bouncing back. So how do you bounce back? You've been stretched, and then you bounce right back.
Yes.
Because you realize tomorrow that, it wasn't really a big deal. I ended up having fun with my family, or something else went on. And I think it's putting that into context for our kids sometimes as we're holding them, that I understand this is so heavy. It's so difficult for you. You know, just let them empathize with them through that process, so that they can really just let it go. And once they've acknowledged that guest, you know, like a feeling, they acknowledged it, it will literally go. 2 minutes later, they are continuing playing on like nothing happened. You know, or they are sleeping. They even forgot that this whole traumatic thing was happening.
And I think that's the thing. Like, and that's what happened to us probably. Like, with the first time that happened, it was horrible. And then it happened again, and you got stretched, but you knew how to bounce back. And now we're all thankfully at that age where we're like, we weren't invited. You go on. But for our kids, it's still like
Guys, I
they're
like my
feeling it.
time. I'm so glad I wasn't invited. I always say who you're going to call, because there is a time where you have your mom's support.
Mm.
We've seen the homeopath. When is it time to call the counselor?
Any time is the time to call a counselor. People come to counseling sessions to decompress after a long week, to rethink their daily, weekly, monthly planners, to really speak about the stuff that maybe is not socially acceptable elsewhere. And in here, it's a safe space for them to divulge. I always see people coming to counseling as a last-ditch resort. You're on the brink of divorce. Now you want to come to marriage counseling. I say premarital counseling. We do premarital counseling. What does that prepare you for? The differences in personalities. It also gives you a picture of how you are going to handle. It gives you a guideline of how you're going to handle some of these big challenges that we know marriage comes with. You know what I mean? So if you prepare yourself with going to counseling, when that incident happens, you are so ready for it. You don't feel, headless chicken. No, you are composed. You actually understand what needs to happen.
I got a real fright there.
I'm taking you on an emotional roller coaster. I like it. I like it. Because that's what it is. Counseling now says, when you see a car crash, you are prepared. And it prepares you for any eventuality. Some people are sitting with parents who are in palliative care, and you must now start to prepare yourself for the what ifs of life. And if you can do it in a space where we can really role play that for you, help you to start processing some of the deep feelings you'll feel. Once you start grieving or whatever direction it goes, you'll be so fine. You'll be like, oh my word, the thing that I was really scared of happening, when it happened, I was okay. And what did you learn? Emotional regulation. And also you've processed your emotions properly in a space where you could just let it all out there. There was a kid who used to use this analogy in therapy with me. He would say, I come here to just vomit everything and then you sort it out for me. And I was like, wow, that is true. This is the one place where you can just be yourself, say whatever you need to say, and we can really look at it together and say, how do we now resolve this? Versus at home, maybe he felt like, oh, I can't be this person because when I act like this, my mom doesn't attend to me or my dad doesn't attend to me.
I love your approach of preventative.
I am big on prevention.
How do I mean, we always talk about homeopathy as a remedy, but how do I remedy my everyday so that I can prevent a problem or prevent having to treat something later on?
So even with a homeopath, you don't have to wait until you get to that point where you're no longer coping. I see lots of patients who come in every month and we talk, because homeopathy does involve a little element of counseling, and we talk about their emotions and what it's doing to their body. And so often we need to preempt. So don't wait until you've got a stomach ulcer from your whatever. When that butterfly feeling never goes away, that's the point to go and find some help. Not when it's eaten away at your stomach, or when your digestive system first starts to go a little bit awry. Come then. Don't wait until you've now got a major problem, or you're, you have gained so much weight because you stress eating and now you've got insulin resistance, or you're a type 2 diabetic. Come before. Let's fix the problem then, not then.
I love that. I love that you say that, because I always say there's such a stigma around seeking mental health services. People will go and schedule a doctor's appointment like it's nothing. Pick up the phone, schedule the doctor's appointment, schedule your dentist appointment. But when it comes to counseling, thank you for the resource. I'll think about it. Not now. It's not the right time. And what I want people to get is there's never a time where you need to present proper and show up and sit and be perfect for Isabelle. There's no such a thing. You can slouch if you slouch. You don't wait until you are fully put together to go to counseling. That doesn't even make sense. You show up as you are, and I'll meet you where you are. And I think that's where people hate being vulnerable. And that's why I say we struggle with vulnerability as a society. We really, really, really do. We think we are very vulnerable and we're so cool and whatever, but we're not. We really aren't.
What is the significance of parent and child coming for counseling?
The significance of parents and child coming to counseling is to be able to navigate their relationship together and also to be able to navigate the world. That is the most significant thing you can do. It's a gift you are giving to even your child to be able to navigate the world with insight about themselves and about how to move in this world as themselves. And as a parent as well, going to counseling gives you the necessary tools and skills that you can walk around with. When you are facing a specific situation, you just pick up your specific tool. You know exactly where to grab it because you know where you put it. Versus when you haven't been going to counseling, you don't even know where your toolbox is to begin with. And that can become very chaotic in a chaotic situation where you don't know where your spare tire is or where any of your tools are. It really leaves you at a disadvantage. And women and kids are always vulnerable, right? We are the vulnerable population. And even to ratios of how many women to men come to counseling, there's always more women because we always are the ones who want to fix ourselves so that we can be present and be that good thermometer. But when we're realizing that you are really spilling over with irritability and stuff like that, it's good to go to counseling.
Ladies, thank you so much for your time. Wow. I want to thank you for joining this insightful journey of emotional first aid and resilience building within families. Our experts are amazing, but so are you. Thank you so much for trying your best to build your family and to help navigate and nurturing an environment where they can just thrive. My name is Elana, and it has been an honor hosting you.